Hi everyone, it's Craig. Welcome to Cutting the Crap with Shap. I am here with my dear friend, amazing educator, traveler, incredible artist, Miss Janna Francis. And I've known Janna for a long time. She is just a dear friend of mine, somebody who I trust and respect and value so much. I'm glad that she's on. You're going to have a great time. She's going to share a topic that I really originally wasn't really thinking that much about, but then I know that she is passionate about it, and I think you're going to love it. It's going to inspire you. It's inspired me. I'm really glad to have her. Just one quick thing. So this is my book. Okay. So, so is the she is the illustrator of almost all of the pictures in the book, and they are just unbelievable.
They're fun.
Unbelievable. Yeah. For she says fun, I say incredible. And since I'm the one running the podcast, I say incredible. So
Okay.
we'll keep it there. Everybody, before I have Janna introduce herself, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing. Those things are really important. That's how they build the channel. I'd really appreciate it. With that said, here we go. The fabulous Janna Francis. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I feel extra special right now. So I didn't think I was that fabulous, but now I feel pretty fabulous. So thanks.
Go on, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an art teacher at William Tennant High School, and have been there this is my 21st year. Which is pretty incredible and amazing, and creeping towards retirement on the road, but definitely enjoying it. Every year, discovering new challenges, new things, really getting inspired by the students, and just being amazed by them, and what they're capable of and what they can do. So I'm also the parent of two wonderful children. My son Gavin is 25 years old and is in the Army, and currently in South Korea right now doing his service. And my daughter is 21 and finding her way in life and living here with me again. So I was an empty nester for about that long. And then my kids must really love me because they keep coming back to stay with me.
I know your kids love you.
So, so that's that. And basically, I mean, besides art and teaching, which of course I love and is my livelihood, as you know, Craig, I love to travel. That is my passion. That is the thing that really, fills my soul and makes me feel happy and makes me feel alive and gets me through the times that are hard. And if I'm not actively traveling, then I'm planning what I am going to do for my next adventure, whether it be near or far. There's a lot of travel, and it's something which I'm sure we'll discuss that I've been doing for almost my whole entire life. It's really shaped who I am, how I see the world, how I teach, and how I move through my own little world. So yeah, traveling is and exploring, and seeing new places and learning about new cultures and meeting new people. All of that stuff that goes along with travel is really where my passion lies. So
I love it.
that's me.
I love it. And everybody, and like I said, I've been working with Janna for a long time. We're always chatting and talking. I've stopped in her class so many times, and if you saw, it's hard to explain because I will tell you right now that art is not my forte. And people say, "Oh my God, anything can be your forte." Art's not my forte. I can't draw a freaking stick figure. But
You just
I
need
can.
a good teacher.
Yeah, gotcha. Um, but I will say this: is I've been in Janna's room hundreds of times. I mean, more times than I can
Yes.
count, and incredible the work that she has on the wall. I've watched the work that her kids have done, and actually, today I was in her room. We were talking about kind of the podcast and what we were going to talk about, and she had a couple pictures that were on her desk that she, I guess, had bought, and they were from students. And
Yeah.
I was just looking at them. I was like, wow, man, that is some crazy stuff. Because I think when
Yeah.
you're not artistic like me, you
Yeah.
really do appreciate the talent that somebody has. And I know Janet does. She does an unbelievable job with the kids. I see her conversations very frequently. She's just
Yeah.
she's an outstanding teacher. But with that said, I wanted to ask you a question about this. I know you mentioned this to me, and I think it's an interesting kind of way to get going with the travel stuff. I didn't realize that you were what's the term, exchange student?
Study abroad.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, really, it started before that. I wasn't necessarily an exchange student. So what happened was, um, I grew up in Montgomery County. I went to Upper Dublin School District. I lived in the same house my whole entire life. I went, kindergarten all the way up into the Upper Dublin High School. I had a wonderful group of friends. I played sports, and as a teenager, my life was very much about my social life and my friends and all that stuff. And basically, one day, right in the middle of 10th grade, my father came home and he was like, "We're moving to England." And I was like, "No, we're not." I was not happy at all. It was very difficult. Um, my best friend, her family offered for me to stay with them for the end of 10th grade, 11th, and 12th grade. They offered for me to just live with them. And of course, I was all about that. I really didn't see the benefits of traveling and of living abroad because I really had never done it.
Hmm.
And back then, for any teenager to be removed from your life and your friends and your family and what you've always known is a really hard thing to do. And of course, back then there were no cell phones and
Oh yeah.
the modern conveniences that might make it a little bit easier today. But basically, my parents were like, "We're going to do this, and this is going to be good for you, and we're going to do it together." And so, long story short, right after the middle of my 10th grade year, we packed up our home and moved to London, England. And my parents had found a school for me over there. It was called the American School in London, but it was essentially an international school for students who were preparing to go on to American University. It was a very small private school, basically, with students that were from America, but also students from South America, Central America, the Middle East, Asia, all over, all over. So, yeah, I went there in the middle of my 10th grade year. It was really hard at first. I cried a lot, and I definitely did not make it easy on my parents. I miss my friends. I would have to write them letters on paper and put it in an envelope and put it in the mail and then send it across the ocean and wait for it to come back. And that was how I would communicate, which, wasn't easy. But in the end, it took me a couple months to get, adjusted. In the end, it was the most amazing experience of my life. It really was the experience that was so pivotal and just changed who I was as a person, how I saw the world, what I really felt was important. Again, when I was living here and, in the States and going to Upper Dublin, it was all I knew. You know, I was very social. That was what mattered. I didn't really care too much about school or education. I always did well, but I just did well because that's who I am. When I got to England and I started going to school in England, um, I really started to value my education. I loved the courses I was taking. I loved my teachers. I had really small classes. Um, and I just started, it opened my eyes. I really thought that America was the center of the universe because that's kind of how it is over here, even
Hmm.
now. And I really just, started getting this appreciation and understanding for other cultures, other religions, other ways of life. I mean, walking through London, London is really truly a melting pot. There are
Mhm.
people from all over the world there, all kinds of languages spoken, religions. I took the subway to school every morning, and
Wow.
my school was very international, and everyone there, not only did they hearken from different countries, but they traveled a lot, and my school offered a lot of travel opportunities, which I took, which were some of the best travel opportunities and travel experiences I've ever had in my life. And with my family, we traveled. It was like, my parents would go over to France to get wine for the weekend, and it was like Pennsylvania to New Jersey. So I
Wow.
really traveled all throughout Europe, and at a very young age, and it totally changed me. It made me who I am today, which I
Wow.
think is a good thing.
Oh, it's a great thing, and the story is great. I've said to Jana many times that I said it today actually, that I really wish that when I was younger I would have traveled more. Because I mean, it's not that I didn't travel, but it was more like I traveled to Florida, and like
Sure.
because that's where my parents went, and that's where I'd
Yeah.
go, and I really didn't start to travel until maybe 10 years ago, and I've been to like Hawaii, which was amazing, and in other places like North Carolina, but like no places overseas. And I love the fact that you mentioned about the challenges that you faced, because I
Yeah.
think I think as I'm listening to it, and of course I know you, so it's not quite as daunting to me, but I think, can you kind of explain, like, people that are listening to you, they might say like, oh my God, how would I do something like that? How do I make that happen? What would you say?
Well, it's funny because even now people say that to me all the time. I was just talking to my neighbor the other night, telling her about my plans for the summer, which are going to be, I'm going to be traveling the whole summer. A lot of it I'll be doing by myself. And, she said to me, she's like, I wish I could, be like you. I travel like that. And I said to her, you can do it. I mean, maybe it is scary at first, and maybe there are things that you don't know, but isn't that what makes us better human beings? Like, if we go through life and never challenge ourselves and always kind of be in the safe spot and never take risks and never try something new, then we don't grow. So, if travel is something that you like to do, certainly don't let your own fears stop you, because once you do it and maybe you take baby steps, maybe you don't start by going on a 3-week trip throughout Italy.
Right,
Maybe you start
right.
by going to Chicago, or going somewhere else in the United States, and not traveling internationally, which brings with it, of course, other things that you have to think about. But um there's something also to be said for this satisfaction and the pride that you feel when you do something that's scary, and you realize that, wow, that was amazing. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago I did my first overnight camping trip by myself.
I remember that.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
was definitely I was a little nervous. I've done lots of camping, and I love camping. And I've always gone with at least one other person. And originally, I had wanted my kids to go with me, and they couldn't. And I asked, Eric, my boyfriend, to go, and he couldn't. And so I was like, I want to go, and I'm doing it. And I was a little nervous, but I did it, and it was so awesome. It was just so fun and so liberating, and I was really proud of myself. I did it by myself. Went on some super long hikes. I pitched my tent. I made my food. I made my fire. Um, I slept through the night. I woke up a couple times, worried that I might be eaten by a bear, but I wasn't.
yes.
And I just felt great afterwards, and I was kind of like on a high, for a couple days after that. I was just like, I did that. So whatever it may be, things are scary sometimes, but I think that's when they're really worth doing. So anybody can travel, and you don't have to have money,
I was going
you
to
know.
ask.
I mean, you really don't. There are so many smart ways that it can be done. I'm a very frugal person. I am not someone who just spends money frivolously. So there's lots of things that I do. I mean, I'm a single parent and I'm a teacher. So I'm not rolling in it, but I
That's a
travel a lot.
that's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be done. There's smart things you can do with credit cards and points for flights and things like that. A lot of times when I travel, I will camp, which I know a lot of people are not comfortable with, but I might not camp the whole time, but I'll do a couple nights in a tent and then a couple nights in an Airbnb or a lodge or whatever. And I'll kind of, um, you know, switch it up that way. I mean, I'm not going and staying in a Marriott or
Right.
a Ritz Carlton, but I'm getting out there, and a lot of times when I travel, I like to go to Airbnbs or camp because I feel like I'm really a part. I'm not like I don't go to all inclusives, and there's nothing wrong with all inclusives. That can be a wonderful, relaxing thing to do. I prefer when I travel to really get a feel for the town, the culture, the people. So I find that camping or renting an Airbnb in a neighborhood really affords me those opportunities and also is a little bit cheaper. And so that's the way I do it.
And it's funny because I was going to ask you, and I obviously we've talked about it, but I was going to ask. The first thing I was thinking as you're talking about this is people are going to be like, "Oh my God, what is she talking about? Who the heck can afford that?" But it's true. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
and I'll relate this to my own life. It's all about like what are the things you're passionate about, and like for
Hmm.
me, I'm a wellness guy. Like everybody who knows me knows I'm a wellness
Hmm.
guy, and if in my own little pea brain, I could have everything, I would own a gym
Yeah.
and I'd have a 10,000 square foot house with a gym in it. But that's not realistic. Like, it's not
Yeah.
realistic to do that. So I try to make the best of the things I have. Like, obviously, I go to a gym, but I bought special equipment that I can bring to the gym that kind of makes it my own, where I'm still at the gym, but I'm using my own equipment, like my own special bars. And again,
Yeah.
it costs money, but it's not something so extreme. I'm going to relate it to you like your camping experience. Like you want to go away, you want to experience life, you want to inspire other people, but you also
Mhm.
want to make sure like they know, like, oh, I'm not staying at the Ritz because
Yeah.
then everybody who's listening to this is going to be like, oh my God, forget that, right? It's
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more like saying like, okay, I don't own a gym, but I can make the best of the situation I have by
Yeah.
getting certain things. And it's like that's what you're talking about, which I think is key. And
Yeah.
I mean it's so inspiring. I know. Can you briefly mention like if I had to say to you pick, and then we'll get into the student travel because I know that's another passion.
Mhm.
If somebody said to you, tell us your it's hard to say favorite. I hate that
I was
term.
gonna say, don't ask me my favorite because I'm so bad at that.
But I'll say I got it. How about this? Can you tell us your most unique vacation?
I mean, honestly, probably my most unique vacation was one of my favorite all-time vacations. Although, again, I can't pick one, but I do have a couple top vacations that I've taken. One of my probably most unique vacations was one that I did when I was living in London in high school, and my school um, had this wonderful program that was they called it the alternatives. And what they would do is it was kind of like October, November. They would actually close the school down for 1 week, and during that week they would offer all these different travel programs. Now there were some programs where you could stay in London and like do like you know recycle and clean up, and like there were all different kinds. There was kind of like STEM programs, even though there wasn't STEM back then. um, but they also offered travel programs, and went I did two really cool trips through my school, junior year and senior year. But junior year, I went horseback riding through the Corbières Mountains, which is the mountain range between France and Spain. And I did that for a full week.
Wow.
So it wasn't just like you can go to a dude ranch or whatever. It wasn't just like we showed up and we went to this ranch and we rode horses, and then we, like, next day we rode horses some more. We actually, flew in, we went to a ranch. We were each assigned a horse. We were taught how to take care of the horse, how to saddle the horse, feed the horse. And then we spent 7 days crossing and riding over the mountain range. And we would ride for maybe 5 or 6 hours a day through the mountains, through creeks, over, around cliffs. And then it was just so cool. Like, you'd be riding for hours, and then all of a sudden, way off in the distance, you'd see like three stone, like old homes or buildings, and that would be where we were staying for the night. And we'd ride to these three stone buildings that were in the middle of nowhere, just in the middle of the mountains. And we'd hop off our horses and take care of them, and we would eat there and play games and sleep there, and then we'd wake up the next morning, get on our horses, and keep riding through the mountains. So, I mean, it was amazing because I love horseback riding. And
I didn't know that.
I mean, we were horseback riding. Yeah, yeah. And we were riding through this beautiful, beautiful country. And I was with, I don't know, maybe 15, 18 of my peers who ended up becoming my very, very, very close friends, because we shared this experience that was so unique and so amazing. And so, as far as unique, that one was pretty amazing in that way.
That's cool.
Now, in my older life, a lot of what I do is more hiking and camping and exploring that way. And I've had a lot of great ones.
I
A lot of
know.
great ones.
I
Yeah.
know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love it. So, I know this is another passion, and I think when I've talked to Janna, this is something that I say, like, I know we're talking about travel, but I think, and this is part of the purpose of cutting the crap with Shap, is really to have a positive influence in our world. That is the purpose. Like, people will always ask me, "Oh my God, Craig, what is the purpose?" And I always say to them, first of all, to learn something. Well, you're
Mhm.
definitely learning something, so check that off. Okay. Be able to take risks. Check that off. And the third thing is to come away with a positive experience, which to me is number
Yeah.
one. I think that number one on my list. And just listening to Janet talk about it, it's so true that it's a positive experience. But one of the things she does that I would say that I admire more than anything, maybe not more than her artwork. Artwork's pretty high up there, but
Yeah.
I would say that the thing that I respect the most, because people who know me know that I love kids. I love being a teacher. I love
Yeah.
being a coach. I've done that for 35 years. It is a passion of mine, along with my wellness piece. But Janet does this student travel, which I think is just incredible. I mean, I wish I could go. It's there's other issues with that, but I think it's just an
One day.
amazing. Yep, I think it's amazing that she does that. Why don't you talk briefly a little bit about the student travel? I love the low income students that you kind of mentioned. So why don't you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, because I love travel so much, and because I am so passionate about it, and because it really truly has shaped my life, and I think it's been so important for me and how I view the world, and because I think it's so important for everyone to travel, because when you travel, you know, you see how other people live. You get an understanding for other cultures, but you also get an understanding for not only the really cool differences that are out there, but you also get an understanding that even though there's all these differences, when it comes down to it, we're really all the same. We have love. We have love for family. We have relationships and connections. And I think that it's just important, especially for our young people, to understand that, because they're the ones that are coming up into the world. They're the ones that are going to be making the
Right,
decisions that we're living by one day. And I think it's important to have that kind of holistic view of the world, and that it's not just us, and that there's a lot to be learned from other people and the way they live, and to treat other people with respect, and
Oh,
all of those
yes.
things. Um, and because travel made such an important impact on me and my life, it's something that I wanted to offer to students, especially a lot of students that where we are. I mean, I can tell you, I ran a trip 2019. I took students to the Dominican Republic. I had a really hard time when I first started advertising for this trip, and I was advertising at school. I had a really hard time getting kids on board. At first they would ask, the very first question was, well, how much does it cost?
Exactly.
You know, and I'd give them a roundabout number. Oh my God, I can't afford it, whatever. And there were things that we did to help kids, fundraisers and things like that. But in the end, for that trip to Dominican Republic, we ended up having 10 students go on that trip. I don't remember the exact number, but I think like 7 of those 10 students had never been on a plane before.
Wow.
Yeah, had never been out of the country, had never been on a plane. Many of them had never been on a boat before. Um, so like all of a sudden now they're getting on a plane, they're going to the Dominican Republic. We did some volunteer work when we were down there. We went to an orphanage, and I mean, it was amazing seeing these students, like their eyes were just like, they were like, oh my God, like, wow, like, yes, it's beautiful, it's Dominican Republic, but look at these people walking down the street with
Yeah.
their like, children in their arms and their stuff, and their and you can see there's a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of hardship for a lot of the people that live there. So the whole experience was really, really incredible. And the kids were so excited. And they literally were like, when are we doing this again? Where are we going next? So my friend and I that ran the trip were like, let's do it again. Let's do this. And so we got back to school. We decided we were going to go to Costa Rica. We started advertising, and literally within like 2 weeks, we had 24 kids signed up.
Wow.
Yeah, because all those kids that went on that first trip, they came back, and they couldn't stop talking about it, and they were
Yeah.
telling their friends about it. And we had one student that did like his AP capstone project based on his experience there. um and then unfortunately with that Costa Rica trip, COVID happened and things
Yep.
got canceled, and now we're where we are now. And I'm taking students this summer to Costa Rica. And I'm super excited, super excited. Yeah, I have never been there.
Nice.
So I'm excited for myself. I'm excited for my students. Again, a lot of them have never been on a plane. Um, and so I just think it's so important. I really do. And I mean, it's fun, it's educational, it's you grow yourself. Um, and I just yeah, I think it's priceless, and really important. So I'm happy to take kids and to offer them these opportunities. And my students know, because I talk about travel all the time, that.
But you know what though, you should though, because I think that what happens is, and this is no matter where, whoever is listening, like whether you are in an area that's wealthy or not, I think is irrelevant really. So much of it is about, and you even said this, you said about broadening your horizons,
Yeah,
which I think is hard because in our world, it's easy to stay in our lanes, you know?
absolutely.
Like the easiest thing we can do is just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again because
Yep,
it's comfortable, you know? And
sure.
I've had other guests where I've talked about that idea of taking risks, broadening your horizons. And when people say that, I am not suggesting at all that it's easy. I think
No,
that's the wrong approach because it's just not. I mean, when I talk about wellness or teaching, those are things that I'm good at. So they come easy to me. You know,
yeah,
I'm good at them, but they weren't always easy. You know, like it's a
sure.
learning process. Like you talked about your travel, about how I loved your part about being in London, how it was you were crying and it was daunting. Well, no crap.
Yeah, it was really
Wh-
hard.
Right, but why wouldn't it be?
Very, yeah,
Why wouldn't it be? It's something new, and I think one of the things I would say is, you're doing such a good thing for students, and yourself. It's a win-win, and
yeah.
maybe for if you're an educator or you're watching this, I think you should really kind of take note of the things that Jan is doing, and she'll have contact information at the end. You'll be able to reach out to her, and
Hmm.
she'll definitely be able to help you, kind of give you some insight, things like that, on just ways to do that. But I love the idea of the taking those risks, broadening those horizons, and
Yeah,
having an inspiring experience. I
yeah.
know that when I went to Belize um,
Mhm.
on my honeymoon, it was it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like just and again, and I will tell the quick story because I think it will get people thinking. It ties into when we flew into the Belize airport. I'll never forget this. A friend of mine, his father had been there, and he great guy. He had said to me, Craig, it's like a fart in the wind, and I'll never forget that when he said that to me. He said it was like a fart in the wind, and I was
Hmm.
like, what the heck does that mean? And he's like, you'll see. And when we flew into it, of course, it's tiny. I
Yeah.
mean, it's tiny. It's like nothing,
Very tiny.
and the we were staying at three different resorts, and I'll never forget, and I hope this resonates with people because it's something that I think deeply about. I am blessed. I really feel that way. I'm blessed in a lot of ways. One of the things that I always remember is when we flew into the airport and we had to get picked up at the airport, and of course, we the driver, we could understand him. He had an accent, and he
Yeah.
was taking us to his first resort. And I'll never forget, we were driving on this rocky road. It was this bumpy road. It was like in this taxi, and all he kept saying is, "Oh my God, Mister and Mrs. Shapiro, wait till you see my house, and wait." And my wife and I were just looking at each other like, "What the heck is he talking about?"
Yeah.
Because we're on these bumpy road. There's little shacks all over the place,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden he's like, look, 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 look. And we look over and he's pointing to his house, which is, of course, this little shack, you know, chicken wire all around it,
Yeah.
whole. But for him, he was the proudest guy ever
Mm.
because he didn't know any different. Like this was his life. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God,
Yeah.
I need to wake the freak up. And when we got out of the taxi, I gave him a $20 bill.
Yeah.
I
I'm
don't
sure that
think he I don't
is
think he ever saw a $20 bill.
no.
I don't think he ever did. If he did, it was not often, and he was just so grateful for that. And it kind of
Oh,
reminds me, like, the kids that you're taking on your trip, they're going to be so grateful for all the things
yeah.
that you're doing. I mean, that's kind of obvious at this point, and I,
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit for doing that.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's a lot of work. And it definitely can be a little stressful for me. I have these kids' lives in my
Oh
hands,
my God.
But the reward is worth it. And I will say that some of the students that went with me to Dominican Republic, they're at this point have graduated from college, some of them, and we're friends on Facebook.
Hmm.
And several of them are traveling all the time, and they're always, posting pictures of where they're going, and it just
That's
makes me
you.
so happy.
That's you.
I mean, I think I was a part of it at least. I helped it along. So if it brings them joy and I had any part in it, then that makes me really happy. So
You know where I'm not going to say anything. Not going to say anything. I'll just say that definitely you've had a big part of it. One of the things that, as we get close to closing, you kind of talked about, you want people to be inspired and to think differently and appreciate things in their life. Um, how can you relate to that?
I mean, I feel like through travel, that is what's given me those things. It's travel has given me inspiration travel has made me think differently because of being exposed to different cultures and different, different ways of life. Um, and, I feel like that's what travel has done, and
Mhm.
again, I feel like I don't know, that's why it's so important for people to explore in that way,
Mhm.
and it can be very accessible, and I think that's important to realize, and thinking differently, there's many ways that ties into travel. You're thinking differently because not only are you meeting new people, seeing new things, but you're also maybe like me, like figuring out, how am I going to make this work with my
Mhm.
life? How am I going to make this happen? How can I afford this? Like how this summer, a lot of the travel that I'm doing is through a program called Woofing, where I'm going to be living on a farm and working and learning how to harvest vegetables and take care of animals. And I'll do that for 5 hours a day, but I'll get my room and my board, and I'm going to get to stay in Wyoming and in Vermont. And next summer, I might be doing it in Spain and in Thailand. So that's a way that I can travel and live in another country, or, go to another state and, really be able to afford it. And also learn and have fun while I'm doing it. So you're thinking differently, not only again because you're experiencing new things, but maybe you're also thinking differently just so you can get yourself to that point where you're having that experience.
And that's what I wanted to touch on. I think that last piece is critical. Is again, as people are watching this and listening to you and hearing us talk, I really believe one of the most critical parts of life is not having the attitude that everything has to be perfect immediately. I think a
No.
lot of times in society, all over the world, we have this all or nothing kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not willing to do a little bit. I got to do it all. And
Yeah.
first of all, it's wrong. That's the first thing. But it also makes things much more daunting when we are trying new things. Like I love the fact that you said you're going to be working 5 hours, but you're also going to have your room, your board for free, and you're going to be able to see other things. And that's kind of like that kind of goes back to my gym analogy of it's everything is a balance, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, there are times where maybe everything falls into place and you do have it all. You know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I mean that happens. That's a good thing. But
Mm-hmm.
in
Sure.
my experience, it is more often than not. There's got to be a little bit of a give and take. You know,
Yeah.
and that can be financially or where you stay or where you go. All of those things I
Yeah.
think are really critical. And I'm not talking about just travel. So let me be clear, everybody. I'm talking about life in
Yeah.
general, everything. Like we got to kind of get out of the mindset that like we got to solve everything all at once and everything has to be perfect all at once. That is not realistic for the vast majority of people. Some people are
No.
very fortunate, but most people, I know Jan and I, like, we're both very blessed, but things are not always easy. There's always going to be struggles.
Oh yeah. A lot of struggle sometimes.
So as we finish up, I love this kind of, I'm going to read it because I know I wouldn't remember it exactly. So maybe you can kind of tie this up here, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so this is a quote that you gave me, and it says, all of life is a book. Those who do not travel only read one page.
Do I need to even say anything about that?
If you don't want, you don't have to. It's up to you. I mean, you can say whatever you
I
like.
mean, I think it's pretty clear, yeah. I mean, if you think about that, all of life is a book. A book is this big thing that's filled with pages. The pages are filled with words. The words have all these ideas. It can be so deep and rich and full. And if you only read the first page, you're not getting all the good stuff, right?
I love it.
All the good stuff is down in the meat of it. So, got to dive in and take the chance and take the risk and step out of your comfort zone, and I think you'll be a better person for it, and so will the world. So,
Oh God, I love that. Oh,
huh?
that's a great closing little piece there, man. Where'd you come up with that from? Everybody. So first of all, I want to thank Janna for being on. you
Thank
know,
you.
and I'll say this. This kind of goes back to it. I'm going to ask you a question. So, are you a camera lover? Do you love to be on camera?
No,
Exactly. And I know that. I know that Janet
I really
doesn't. But
don't like it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I know that. But here's my thing. Like, she decided to come on, and I think that is, and part of that's because we're very close. I mean, not some random dude off. And I think again that kind of goes back to it that I love cameras. I mean, I don't have any problem being on camera, and I know that Jan is was a little hesitant. But when I asked her to come on, she kind of like a little hesitant at first, but kind of, yeah, Shap, I'll do it. And
Yeah.
I think obviously she did an amazing job. Super
Thank you.
inspiring.
I hope so.
Yeah, super inspiring, and really touched on topics that I would not normally speak that much about because it's not my wheelhouse. But I think I am a huge believer in broadening our horizons. Uh, Everybody who I've had on, and I say this to anybody, if you want to come on, I'd love to have you on. It doesn't matter what your interests are. Even though I tend to lean more in the education wellness theme, I'm willing to have anybody on because I think it's all about making the world a better place. It's not about just one thing. We always got to be willing to make the world a better place. So with that, Janet, thank you for just being you and
Oh,
being your most awesome self. I appreciate you.
right
As
back.
we Thank you, Janet. As we kind of close up, I want everybody to know that's the same thing I always say is, first of all, please consider subscribing and liking and sharing. If you like the episode, which you will have to, please share it out with other people. I'll have Janet's contact information at the end. You'll be able to see it. You can reach out to her. But my finish for today is something that she said, and it's kind of like I'm just going to simply say it this way: dive right in. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for all you do. Janna, you're awesome. Everybody, have a great night. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye, Craig. Thanks so much.